There is an old saying, hindsight is 20/20. We can look and reflect on our mistakes to make a better tomorrow. But what if we could make a better yesterday? Time travel has been a staple in science fiction since H.G. Wells' first publication of The Time Machine in 1895. As media progressed, we have seen great TV shows like Doctor Who and great movies like Back to the Future that have done an excellent job telling time travel stories. Video games are now telling their own spins on time travel. There have been wonderful games in the last few years that have excelled time travel, such as The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask, or Chrono Trigger. But today we are going to focus on one particular series, Red Alert. In my mind, the Red Alert Saga is the gem of the Command & Conquer series. It takes on alternate history and presents us with a very dark what if. What if the Nazis never came to power? And what if Einstein was removed from the space-time continuum? But these questions all relate back to the core of Red Alert. Is time travel possible? Today on the New Age Gamers, we're going to travel back into the lore of Red Alert and present you with some issues with time travel in general. Oh, and by the way, spoilers!
In order to understand Red Alert, we need to dive into the lore. Hold on a second, guys. Hey Josh, can we have something a bit more fitting for the rise of the Soviet Union? Ah, much better. Now let's get into the story. In the wake of World War II, Albert Einstein was researching the possibility of time travel. He figured out that if he could stop Hitler from rising to power, he could prevent the millions of lives lost during the Second World War. In 1946, Einstein creates a time machine that allows him to travel back in time to 1924, before Hitler came to power. He eliminated him from the timeline by causing a rupture in space and time by shaking his hand, thus making the Nazis' rise to power never happen in 1933. When Einstein travels back to the present in 1946, he is shocked to see what he has done. By removing Nazi Germany, he had created a more powerful Soviet Union, thus causing a new world war between the Allies and the Soviet Union. This war lasted from 1946 till 1953, at which the Allies beat the Soviet Union at a higher cost of life. Ironic, right? This later kicked off the events of Red Alert 2 and World War III. I am, for the most part, going to skip over its events involving Yuri and mind control because I want to examine the events of Red Alert 3. Sorry, your supporters, but you really don't have a choice. Really, you are under the control of mind control. No free will. 0 out of 10. In the 1980s, the Soviet Union was in ruin. With the premier in hiding, the nation was falling apart. Soviet officer Antonio Cherdenko takes things into his own hands. He brings Soviet General Nikolai Krukov and head scientist Dr. Gregor Zelensky back in time to 1927. Cherdenko removes Einstein from space-time continuum, thus stopping the events of Einstein in 1946 and his involvement with the death of Hitler. When they return to the present day, they find that the Soviet Union is the most powerful nation in the world. Cherdenko is now the head of the Soviet Union, but they have created a more powerful empire of the rising sun out of Japan, which threatens the power struggle of the world. General Krukov, to his alarm, realizes that nuclear weapons were never invented, so there is no mutually assured destruction or MAD. Without MAD, there is no check system to stop total war, thus kicking off the events of Red Alert 3.
I know that was difficult to understand, but this is where your brain gets fried. We are now going to dive into paradoxes. The events of Red Alert 3 create a temporal paradox. Temporal paradoxes can be divided into 3 different kinds of paradoxes: bootstrap, predestination, and the most famous, the grandfather paradox.
The bootstrap paradox is when items or information are passed from the future to the past, which in turn become the same items of information that are subsequently passed from the past to the future. This creates a loop of information or items which causes the cause and effect cycle to become one, because one can never really know what caused or affected an item of information. I know this sounds complex, let's give an example to clear things up a bit. Bopes loves the movie Back to the Future. He would love to have the hoverboard Marty uses in the second Back to the Future movie. So Bopes uses his time machine to go into the future and steal one. He travels back into the present and shows the world what he has. Eventually, a copy of the hoverboard ends up being the hoverboard Bopes originally steals. In other words, the hoverboard is a copy of itself, and it is not possible to state whether the original idea for the hoverboard came from.
The most famous paradox is the grandfather paradox. Stephen Hawking made this paradox simpler to understand, so we are going to do this the mad scientist paradox way. It works the same way though, so let's give it a shot. So a mad scientist has constructed a hole in the fabric of the universe, which allows him to see 1 minute into the past. He puts together a pistol and then looks into the hole in time and space. He sees himself. He is determined to kill himself by firing a bullet into the hole, killing a former version of himself. He fires, killing himself from a minute ago. But now we are left with a question: who fired the shot? In reality, the scientist fired the shot, but he is killed before he can actually put the pistol together.
The predestination paradox is by definition an effect that has no beginning and no end. In a loop. What happens is you go back and try to prevent something, but it happens anyway. This is what happens in the first Red Alert, in a way. Einstein tries to prevent World War II, but in the process starts World War II. A famous example of this is a man receives information about his own future, telling him that he will die from a heart attack. He resolves to get as fit as possible to avoid that fate, but in doing so, overexerts himself, causing him to suffer from a heart attack.
Notice today we did not solve any of our questions that we presented you with. We are failures. All three paradoxes can't be resolved. There is no way to know the answers to these paradoxes, being time travel does not exist, and most likely it will never exist. I can prove it for you. I want you to get up from your chair and look out the window. Do you see any tourists? You would think people from the future would like to see how people lived in 2015. So, time travel's a bust. So no, you can't go back in time and say the right things to that special girl you loved. And maybe it's better that way. And on that depressing note, this is Brody and the New Age Gamers wishing you a great day.